Haunt is a new horror film produced by Eli Roth, and is directed by the producers and writers of A Quiet Place, one of my favorite films of 2018. I had no idea this film existed, I just saw it advertised on Instagram last night, but I saw A Quiet Place and Eli Roth attached to it, so I was like, why is this not getting recognition? Why is this not being advertised? So I had nothing better to do on Friday the 13th. Actually, I could have probably just watched Friday the 13th, but I watched this film instead. So what Haunt is about, it's about this group of teenagers who find this pamphlet of this haunted house that's being advertised. They decide to go to this haunted house. They want to have a good time on Halloween. One of them is going through an abusive relationship, so she decides to tag along to forget about the whole situation. So when they go to this haunted house, they're having fun at first, but then they start to realize that a lot of the stuff that's happening is real. These people are trying to hurt them, they're trying to kill them, and they have to figure out a way to get out of there, and they're still trying to figure out if it's still an attraction or if this is a place where they just need to leave. This film is very similar to a film that came out in 2018 called Hellfest, except Hellfest wasn't a haunted house. Hellfest was an attraction, like an amusement park, where these group of teenagers decide to go to this amusement park, and they're having fun at first, and then they start to see all these weird things happening around the park, and then they start to realize that, oh, these murders are actually real murders, so we should probably get out of here. This film, however, is not an amusement park, it's just one haunted house, but these films are very, very similar in the fact that they deal with these kids trying to figure out if they're just having fun, or if they're in danger, and also, these movies aren't really that good. It's not a terrible movie, but I could have definitely watched something better on Friday the 13th. And there's stuff to really appreciate from this film. Eli Roth is obviously written all over this. The cinematography and the set design is definitely very similar to Hostel. Like, the haunted house that they're in. It actually kind of feels like a scene out of Hostel. If you were to walk in on someone watching this movie, they'd probably be like, oh, are you watching Hostel? But it's actually like this film. So it's very similar in that aspect where it's just a very dirty environment. It's very rusty. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about it was like it actually felt super uncomfortable to look at. And there's also some usage of chainsaws, so obviously that's a homage to, you know, Hostel and everything. So there's just a lot of stuff in here where if you're a fan of Eli Roth's work, you're going to see like a lot of these homages. And yeah, that's one of the takeaways. But in terms of the movie by itself, I just didn't really feel like it was that good. There's a lot of stuff that interests me, but like it just doesn't really go down the route where I wanted it to go. There's a lot of good like jump scares. Like in the beginning of the film, they think that somebody's following them and they're looking down the road, and as they're like staring down the road for like 10 seconds and you know there's like just this silence, the sign for the haunted house lights up and it's like, oh, that's a good scare. That's really cool, like very James Wan oriented. But then the film decides to go this generic route where they're being chased around this haunted house by these people. But there's just nothing in this film that makes it stand out on its own. It's just reliant on the fact that this is a horror film. It's Friday the 13th. You probably had nothing better to do and you're watching this. And I really just was wanting this film to get better. And there's things in this film where I'm just like, ooh, is it going somewhere? One of the things is that the people who are running this haunted house, they're wearing masks. And then when it finally gets to the point where they take off their masks, you find out that these people who are running this haunted house are actually like deformed figures. They've got like weird stuff going on in their faces. One of them has horns coming out. It's just like, it's super weird. Definitely modified faces. And you start to wonder like, oh, okay, so like, is this like you try to form a plot in your head to figure out where this film is going. And it's like, oh, is this like ran by like demons who are trying to fulfill the devil's work? Like, oh, do they need to like fulfill this prophecy by killing these teenagers on Halloween night to, you know, do this deed or whatever? Like, you try to figure out like what's going on, like what's the point of all this? Like, why do these guys look like this? Why are they just killing these random teenagers? Like, why have they ran this haunted house? Like, is there a point to all this? Like, are they trying to fulfill like some kind of ritual? But it never actually explains what they're actually doing or what their purpose is. They're just running a haunted house. They went across town and put up all these posters to invite all these kids to this haunted house just to kill them. Now, one could say like, okay, they're just assholes. Like, they're just wanting to kill kids. That's fine. But a lot of the times with a lot of movies nowadays, like, I'm going to use this movie as an example. I've never watched it, but I've seen scenes like Hostel, Eli Roth's movie. You understand why that's all happening because, you know, people are sick and demented. They're paying to kill people. So, like, that's a really disturbing concept. And even with a recent film, Ready or Not, this rich and pretentious family, who obviously have no idea what they're doing, are trying to kill this bride because they made a deal with the devil to gain all this money. Like, this is all purpose. This is all reasoning as to why this is all happening. But in this film, these are just random dudes who made a haunted house who are just killing random teenagers. And, one could say, like, people are just sick. People are just wanting to, like, randomly kill people. And, that is a thing. But I like movies where there's a bit of reasoning behind why a lot of things are happening. Like, why is this occurring? Why do these teenagers have to die? Oh, it's just because these guys are assholes. Okay, whatever, sure. There's even some really stupid decisions that these teenagers make throughout this film where they're in a position where they realize that their friend has been killed, one of them is very badly hurt, and then they come across a staff member at this haunted house. Now, after everything that's happened to them in this situation, they should just try to get out of there and just move on and see everybody there as a threat. But they see this masked person, and they decide to trust him. Like, oh, hey, can you help us get out of here? And it's like, no. You don't trust anyone at that haunted house. Obviously, you're in danger. Why are you trusting this person who won't give you their, like, full name, who won't take off their mask? Like, what are you... No. You're stupid. To the film's credit, it actually tries to, like, kind of mess with your head a little bit. Like, oh, the murder that you saw earlier in the film, like, with their friend, that was all just staged. Like, maybe they grab people and they say, like, oh, do this. Like, some... To the film's credit, like, it's interesting to kind of, like, think of that as, like, oh, maybe this is just, like, a haunted house that's, like, toying with their heads a little bit. But as an audience, we know that that is not the case, and that this is just a generic horror film that is not very creative, and that they are just there to kill these people. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like, the film is just not creative. It doesn't do anything different. And what's really worse is that the film tries to make up for that by tying in this story of this main girl who just got out of an abusive relationship, who had an alcoholic father in the past who beat her mother, and it tries to tie all of this into a way where she grows as a person at the end of the movie, but it just comes off as incredibly forced, so you have a reason to care for her. And it didn't work for me. The film also has the potential to have this really disturbing ending. I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I'll give you some minor details as to what happens in the beginning. So basically, and this is really funny too, the haunted house makes them sign a liability form. So if they're hurt or injured in this haunted house, there's a liability form for that. That is so funny that, that this haunted house, who's trying to kill them, makes them sign a liability form. And I'm thinking to myself, why? But as the film progresses, you find out when they sign these liability forms, they put their addresses on these pieces of paper. So it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So if one of them escapes, one of the employees can find them at their house and, take them out. And the ending of this film, where I thought it was going, I thought it was going to be very chilling. I was like, oh, they have their addresses. That's going to be like a very chilling thing. But the way that the film ends is very Home Alone oriented. And I was just like, no, you could have done something cool, or just left an impact on the audience, but you decided to go like this stupid Home Alone. It's actually, like, what's really funny, a shotgun is involved, and it's very, very, very similar to the ending of A Quiet Place. I don't know. The film is not that good. It's watchable, though. If you're bored and you're with a group of people and you're just hanging out, you could watch this on Netflix, but the fact that, I rented it and I paid money and stuff, and, seeing all these, like, names attached to it, I was expecting something maybe above my expectations. It's just regular, though. It's just a regular horror film. Did you guys see this movie? Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this film if you've seen it yet. Like this video, share it, and please subscribe to Pixel Talk if you haven't yet for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, gaming content, and so on. Thank you guys so much. I am Corbin Stuckey, and this is Pixel Talk.